Hey, OncoPT, and welcome back to the OncoPT podcast. Now, y'all know I love a good repeat guest, and this one is no different. I am so delighted to offer, I don't know what we're talking about, to bring back Dr. Jen Bernstein. You know her, you love her. She is actually the specialization chair, which is a brand new position with APTA Oncology, and I could not wait to have her back on to talk about this very nuanced and kind of scary topic, Jen.
Yeah,
I don't know about you, but I kind of feel that way.
you nailed it. I kind of have like tingles on the inside right now. First of all,
Love
because
it.
we're back,
We're back.
we're
Oh my
back,
God.
we're back. But you're right. This is a topic that sent me into a little bit of a spiral. So I can imagine other people felt the same way.
Yeah. Okay, so quick recap.
Yeah.
Dr. Jen Bernstein
Here
is
she
a
is.
wonderful physical therapist that we're going to talk to today. So, Jen, would you mind introducing yourself to maybe the listeners who haven't met you yet?
Yes. Hi, everybody. I'm Jen Bernstein. I am a certified oncology clinical specialist, and I work at an acute care hospital focusing mainly on pediatrics. I do have a fair share of AYA patients, which is probably my biggest love in the whole wide world. And I focus on oncology and bone marrow transplant in the inpatient setting. So lots of ups, lots and downs. But we just, we do what we do because we love it. I moved out to the Midwest almost 10 years ago, expecting to be here for, a year or two and move back to my homeland on the East Coast. But when you find a place you love, it's hard to leave. And this place, this job has given me so much, and it has led me to the position that I am in today, which is an oncology just fiend. I love it. I live for it. And I can't believe how many doors it's opened for me. Being the specialization chair, being a board certified specialist, meeting new people, being on a stinking podcast. I mean, I'm so lucky.
Okay, so I'm going to tell a little story for both you and the audience.
Sweet.
So, in 2020, as the world was shutting down, I was like, now is a great time to do specialization because I knew, especially after practicing on my own for a couple years, that I needed something else to take me to that next level to where I was really comfortable and confident with the oncology patient population. Like, I didn't know what I was going to learn, but I knew that that process was going to catapult me, and I do have to say, like, I was 100% correct. So I'm doing this process of preparing for the specialty application. Of course, I write my case report, I submit that. I then start the actual studying process, take my board certification exam. A few months later, found out I passed. And I'm not going to lie, Jen, I kind of thought I was done.
Nailed it.
And to my shock and surprise, I got a letter like the week or the month after I found out that I passed that was like, how to prepare for your maintenance. And I was aghast. I was upset. I was a bit surprised because I feel like, and maybe there's other listeners and maybe even you who agree with this, I feel like there's such a push and focus on the initial certification that maintenance stuff kind of flies under the radar. And I think it surprises and frustrates clinicians. So first of all, let's talk about this. What the heck is this maintenance of specialty certification process that we're talking about?
Right. So I have to jump off of what you said for a second because I sat down to take my exam on March 16th, 2020. I'm sorry, March 12th,
Oh my God.
2020. And the world shut down on March 16th, 2020. So literally 4 days before I sat down to take this exam.
Oh my God.
And not only did I not know what came next from the world of specialization, but at that time, the world had no idea what came next from a COVID perspective, right?
Period, right?
So
Yes.
talk about just feeling like a lost puppy, having no clue what was happening. And I too then had this word thrown out at me called maintenance. And I was like, what do you mean maintenance? I've proved myself.
Yeah.
What
Yeah. Exactly.
What are you talking about? I did. I studied. And for those that are listening, I'm going to take this opportunity to encourage you.
Yes.
I'm in a really unique position. I see pediatric oncology, AYA, bone marrow transplant. I have truly never seen a patient with breast cancer. I don't see those, you know, more adult head and neck, I mean, you name it, prostate. And so studying for this exam challenged me, and I had to go out and seek those opportunities. But not only did I have to do it then, I'm still doing it now. And I don't want people who are in this little bubble of where they work and what they do to be afraid to sit for this exam. You can do it. Take it from me. You can do it.
Yes.
But you can't stop. You can't stop. And that's where this maintenance track comes in. I mean, gosh, what do we even say about it? Where do we begin? Where do we begin?
Exactly. Exactly.
So this maintenance period, I guess we can call it, this maintenance track, is about a 10-year process, right? So we get our specialization, and the way I like to think of it is we have check-ins at years 3, 6, and 9. And at year 10, we sit down and we take a little bit of an open book exam, as they say. And so that's the briefest way to capture it and outline it. But I think we would be doing people a disservice to not talk about what happens in those 3, 6, 9 year periods.
Yes.
And that's especially where I kind of had to dive deep and learn a little bit. I think it's really easy to be like, okay, in 10 years, I'll sit down, refresh my knowledge, catch up with the latest evidence and literature. But what do I need to do in between? And that is where I think we can help some people.
Yes.
So let's talk about it. We are given a beautiful webpage to go to that kind of puts it all out there. The reason that I like this webpage, they've done a great job updating it as we go. And as we've learned, as some of these first classes of specialization have sat down to go through it and given feedback. And really, the thing that I like about this process is it helped me understand what I needed to do to set myself up for success. So it kind of breaks down different categories of, I guess we'll call them opportunities. Different categories of opportunities to help us grow as clinicians, but also give back to the community of oncology. I think so much of what we do as specialists is to help our practice and help our patients, but we're also helping the entire community. I mean, look at us. We're sitting, we're talking, we're reaching the people, right? And so it'd be crazy to say that this is just for ourselves. But throughout these years, 3, 6, and 9, there are opportunities for us to get out and be, let's say, an item writer for the specialty exam. That's a big one. Every certain amount of questions you help write, you get a point. And that point is added to your big application. Doing things like peer-reviewed journals, teaching classes, being out there doing lectures. These are all examples of ways that we as clinicians with this beautiful specialty can get out there and talk to the people. So I encourage everybody to go through that list, see what fits for them, and make a plan. I think the worst thing that you can do is get to your year 2.5 and have not started.
Yeah.
So if you go and you listen early or you look through early, you really can get a better idea of what you need to do to get out there. I think the biggest challenge for me in this process, in this first chunk of process for my first 3 years, was a case report, which I know sounds crazy because I wrote a case report to sit for the exam. Right. For some reason, this felt different for me. This felt different because I felt like my first case report was really how I applied the evidence to my practice. And I had to show that I kind of knew what I was talking about, that I was a fit. When I sat down to write this case report, I was like, how can I show them that I'm special? How can I show them that you gave me this title and I deserve it? And I literally sat for days and I stared at a blank document and I would type a couple words and I'd be like, no, that's not it. That's not it. It's not special enough. It's not unique enough. And I finally got to the point where I reached out to several other specialists, you included, and I was like, what in the world do I write about? What do I do? How do I make this different than the 60 other case reports they're reading with this group? So that they remember why I was chosen to sit for this exam and why they're proud to label me as a specialist. And the great Scott Capozza wrote back, hello, Scott, if you're listening. The great Scott Capozza wrote back and he said, write about something that you would be proud to tell me and teach me about. And I was like, okay. And I sat down and I finished my case report in an hour and a half.
Oh my God.
Yes. Because I no longer was sitting there thinking about what are people going to think when they read this. I sat down and I wrote about something that I was proud of. And that changed it for me completely. And then I got approved. I passed this process. So I know what I did was worth it. But
Nice.
yeah, it's challenging. It's challenging to get your mind to think outside of our little clinician bubble sometimes.
If I can, Jen, I want to jump in and first of all call back to mind the initial struggle you were having with writing this. It's not like a full-blown case report like we
No.
do for the initial application.
No.
It's kind of a mini case report. It's
Yep.
more of a reflection from what I understand. And this
Yes,
is someone who has not started writing theirs yet. Full
are
disclosure.
correct.
But that I feel already, even before you said it, I was feeling it but didn't have the words for it. I've been feeling this pressure of now that I've been a specialist and looking back over the cases that I've worked with since then of like, I don't know if what I've done like can live up to or like be bigger than my initial case report. Cause like you, I wrote a flipping fantastic case report and like I am really, really proud of it.
Yes.
And rightly so. And if you write a case report that passes, like, first of all, if you write it, you should be proud. But if it especially passes the very stringent requirements for the ABPTS oncology case report, like, go out and celebrate because hot dang. But I feel like that does kind of set a precedent that in my mind, and it sounds like you experience this too, of like, how do I top it? How do I make it even better? And which again, we love Scott Capozza on this podcast, like
Yes, we
all
do.
day, every day.
Fan club.
But that is, oh my God, I feel like my life has changed from hearing what he shared with you. Oh, and I feel better already. Oh my God.
Yes, truly. No, his insight really allowed me to shift my focus. And again, I felt like that first case report was years of sweat and tears and just the culmination of the realization that like this meant something to me, this world, this oncology world that we live in. And I was so proud to hit submit on that initial case report. And when you almost have to like bring it down a notch, it's intimidating.
Yeah.
But I found a way to, and I'm still just as proud, I guess, if not even more proud of what I submitted for my maintenance than what I did for my initial. And that's because I made it personal. I took a patient, and I think I want to encourage people, and I talked a lot about this in my case report. I took a patient that didn't have an easy road, that didn't follow the evidence per se, that was off the beaten path. And so while maybe the outcomes weren't what we expect, we didn't see that, high frequency, low intensity exercise saved this patient, because it didn't. We saw that the consistency and the showing up and the support is what helped get this patient to a place that they could live their life to the fullest until the end. And one of the ending lines in this case report that I wrote for maintenance was that as therapists, we focus so much on outcomes. Outcomes are, they drive us. And in this case, it wasn't necessarily about the outcome. It's what we did in the interim that changed this patient's life. And so I want to encourage people to not only take those success stories, don't necessarily take what you think is black and white, what makes sense, what follows this clear picture of oncology care. Find something that made you proud, regardless of the outcome. Right?
That's just such a warm hug.
Try.
Across the microphone that I just oh, I love that so much.
It's true, because that's where our passion lies, right? Is what we do to give these patients their happiness and their time with their family and their friends, and helping them feel even a little bit like themselves. And if you write about that, and you can get out there and you can teach others about that, whether it's through presentations, whether it's through item writing questions that you're putting out there, whether it's, in a paper that you are trying to have published, that's what people want to see, and they want to hear that realness, right?
I feel like I already have a different appreciation of the Mosky 18 minutes into our conversation. When I came into this interview, I had a very kind of specific approach that I was coming from, which was, I am starting this process. I am nervous. Frankly, I'm frustrated, because I do feel like I had a little bit of the rug pulled out from underneath me when this all started, which that's a different story. But hearing you talk about what goes into this true maintenance of really demonstrating your specialty practice is not ultimately about what have you done to be worthy of this certification still, but and this is what I think is most important, and something that I talk about in the initial certification, but I'm seeing now how it does translate over. I learn on air, y'all. How crucial it is that as a specialist, you're not just holding that information close to you. That you are taking your newfound knowledge and experience and application of all of this and improving the lives of your patients, but also actually making oncology physical therapy better. And I think that's something, I shared this with you off air, Jen, but I'm going to bring it up now. I've been really frustrated this summer clinically I have several patients on my caseload right now that I actually shouldn't. And it's not because I don't want to see them, because they are delightful. And I love, they just light up the whole space when they come in here. But the reason I shouldn't be seeing them is previously they were seeing other therapists. And the only reason that they found their way to me is because they were told by their therapist something along the lines of, you should just be happy to be alive. And that will never cease to infuriate me.
No,
Like, talk about a dagger through the heart, twist
literally.
it, and then pour salt in the wound of like,
Right.
this is the reality that we're facing in oncology, not just in my area, but across, frankly, I think the country, that there are some not great therapists out there that are treating our patients. And by holding this information close to ourselves, we are not actively doing that, but we are definitely not helping this situation.
Right. And I think one of the things that I've learned through this process is, again, how focused for the right for good reason that our discipline as a whole is on positive outcomes, right? I think one of the things that I really really struggle with from as a healthcare professional, and I wish I had known more about before I came out into the real world, was that at the end of the day healthcare is a business, right? And
Yeah. Yeah.
I went into healthcare to help people. And I didn't realize how driven our practice is by productivity and, again, positive outcomes. I feel like I keep coming back to that word is
Yep.
if we can get a patient in the door, we can treat them and we can get them out the door, we've succeeded. And I think in this world of oncology care, it's very different. And what
Yep.
this maintenance process has taught me is that just naturally, by by being a voice, by writing those abstracts, by putting yourself out there to students, all of these things that coincidentally help you maintain your certification, you are changing the right. I mean, come on.
Oh my God.
Crazy. You are helping the patients we treat because what we're seeing is our patients live longer, which is beautiful. But because of that, we are seeing these lifelong impairments. And so we may have short term success, but what does that long term success look like for these patients? We're not sure. But that is the beauty of this process. I think naturally, and again, I use myself as examples a lot because what else can I speak to better than myself? But I will tell you, when that letter came about maintenance, I was furious. I was so angry. And I know I talked about it. I was like, isn't it enough? I did all this stuff. I proved to you. I proved to you I'm good enough. And now you want me to keep going. But now, the way I look at it is you are giving me a platform. And it's not a to-do list. It's not a checklist. It's a way to empower other professionals to help our patients because we're not the only ones who treat them.
Yeah.
Even though I would love to treat every oncology patient
Right.
in the world, right? But the truth is we don't. And so by getting ourselves out there and following these prompts that are provided to us, we are changing the outcome for our patients in the long run.
Yes.
I mean, what more could we want?
Like I said, I genuinely have like a change of heart that I am actively experiencing during this conversation.
Yeah. It's taken
And
me a
you
while
know,
to
I
get
do
here, though.
yeah, like that's, it's so interesting, some of these things that I'm really just like thinking through on. And again, I do feel like this summer, like as much as I didn't want it to happen, this summer needed to happen for me to really appreciate like why it's so important that we're doing XYZ as part of the MOSCI process. So, first of all, Jen, thank you for sharing that because I think that's really, really important. Kind of like setting the stage of why we're doing the what, because I definitely was hung up on the what and the how, but not the why. So, taking it and actually looking back on your own process through the MOSCI, when did you start? How long did it take? Like, what kind of effort was required to do this as part of your MOSCI application or whatever that is?
Right. I think if I'm being, I mean, I will always be honest. I think the first year as a specialist, I don't even know what I was doing or where I was because it was the middle of 2020.
Oh, yeah,
And,
absolutely.
CSM was virtual. And, you know, people were just focused on surviving, right? Whether that was because of this global pandemic or because they were working overtime or because they were separated from their family to keep them healthy. And so for me, I think this process is different than it might be for future specialists.
Yeah.
If I could go back in time, I would have started this process right away of this maintenance period. I would have said, "Hey, I have 3 years. Let's see how I can take these prompts that are given to me and I can kind of rank and make a plan as to how to achieve them." And what ended up happening was it was towards like the end of 2021, beginning of 2022, and I was like, oh my gosh, like this is coming before I even know it.
Yep.
And just naturally, I have some things under my belt, but I've been so focused on just existing that it's been hard to even check off these items on my list. And so,
Right.
one of the things that I would encourage people is when you get that letter that you passed that exam, open up the website and look at what it takes to maintain your certification. I don't say that because I want you to, I don't want to dampen the fun over being a new specialist because OMG, you should celebrate. You should just live it up. But that way you can make a strategic plan for yourself.
Yeah.
And it doesn't all of a sudden show up. Because some of these things take time. If you're writing an abstract, you could be the best writer in the entire world, but that process probably won't turn over in a quick amount of time.
Yep.
When you're doing, item writing for the exam, you need to go out there and you need to look at the evidence and you need to write questions and you need to submit those questions and they have to be looked at and you're going to make rounds of edits. So again, it doesn't happen overnight. So if you can have an idea of what is required or those prompts that are given to you, you can end up enjoying this process a little bit more. And I think that's part of why the oncology section of the APTA kind of sat down and said, we need someone to guide our specialists. And we're going to create a specialization chair. We're going to put somebody out there who can kind of give them this advice. And coincidentally, that person is me. Which is very exciting because this is all new. And I think we're learning, right? We are learning as we go. But one of the things that, as the specialization chair, I'm trying to do is make this process more fun for people. I want this process to be, I mean, you know me, I'm all about fun, but I want it to be enjoyable. I want people to be proud of the things that they're accomplishing and not just feel like they're checking a box on a list. I want other specialists to connect with each other, whether it's when you've been approved to sit for the exam or it's during that period where you're like, I can't even keep my head above water, or it's after and you're like, okay, I have this specialization. Now what do I do? So, the goal is to create these partnerships and these friendships and, these workshops that our specialists can help each other through this process. I have to say, for me, the first thing I did was take on item writing. And I did that with a nudge from my study partner, who I coincidentally met at CSM in Denver in 2020, and we were on separate coasts, and we had completely different schedules and experience. I was kind of still, I mean, I'm 10 years into my career and I still feel like a newbie, right? Like, I think a newbie
Yes.
might be like, oh, you have experience, but I still feel like I learn something new every day. And this
Mm-hmm.
beautiful mentor who was years into her career, we didn't match at all. Like, there was nothing about us that fit together, yet somehow we complemented each other
Came
beautifully.
together. I
And
love it.
afterwards, where I was spiraling of like, what do I do now? I got this nudge. And she was like, go sit and do item writing. And I was like, I don't know. I don't know, but okay, I'll try. And I went to that first item writing conference once we were back together in person
Mm-hmm.
at CSM. And
Mm-hmm.
the first person I met was Alex Hill. And from through
Oh,
Alex Hill, I met you. And through you, I met Scott. And through Scott, I met Paula. And right, we spiral, right? And through
you
these
really do.
people, right through that one thing that I was nudged to do, I was able to just naturally meet all of these other requirements because I found people,
Oh my God.
right? Like I found people who made me want to get out there
Yeah.
and presented me with opportunities that I never thought were possible. And so that's the other thing I want people to remember is even if you pick one thing on the list to start with and that's all you can manage at the time because of
Mm-hmm.
life. Life
Mm-hmm.
is crazy. Children,
Yep.
jobs, just yourself, your whatever it might be. Start with one thing. That's why I think making that kind of structured list of like what can I accomplish now, but what do I maybe want to accomplish along the way is helpful. Because when you start with
Mm-hmm.
that one thing, you never know where that one thing is going to take you.
Agreed 100%.
Right?
I mean, I don't honestly, I hear people talk about like professionally, one thing led to another, and then I was involved in this. And I remember hearing that in PT school, and I was like, that's a load of baloney. Like, don't believe it. Oncology has changed my mind 100% of like it's been so natural to truly flow like you're talking about from one thing to another.
Hmm.
And I think that's one of the things that does comfort me about this process is like I am probably already doing some things on that list, and maybe I just have to add a few more to make sure that I meet all of those requirements. Like, it definitely feels less overwhelming. And again, I think, like, maybe sending out that letter of, hey, don't forget about your MOSCI the month after you get your specialist, like, maybe that's not a good strategy, but it is the strategy that is current. You
Right.
know, and so maybe like even having the time to sit on it and be like, okay, this is like, I have come to accept that
Hmm.
this is something I need to do, and now I'm going to move forward with it instead of like denial. Like it almost sounds like stages of grief of like,
Yes.
no way am I going to do this,
Right.
to now I am going to do this. I'm going to get it done.
Hmm. I'm going to get it done and I'm going to do a real good job doing it.
Love it.
Right? Yeah.
What do you, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think just like anything good in life, we have to continue to challenge ourselves. And this process is a challenge. And it does. I agree with you 100%. You get that letter while you're still on that high. And you're like, can't I just enjoy this moment?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. But it reminds you that there's a challenge along the way.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes that challenge more enjoyable.
Yeah.
It feels like a coast, a ride, rather than a sprint to the finish line.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think we have also come a long way since this specialization started. Like we were new. I mean, I was only the second
Mm-hmm.
class that sat for this exam.
Yep.
And so for all I knew, I took a test and again, I was done.
Right.
And it really wasn't until I also heard the class before me start talking about it that I was like, oh, like I did get that letter and I kind of filed it aside because I just figured I had to pay something and I was maintained. And so I think the fact that we're talking about it more and we're publicizing it more is
Yep.
also going to start to change the way that people perceive the maintenance process.
Good. Good. Yeah, that's it's needed. It's needed. And it is a good point as far as like this is still a new process in oncology. Like we know this has been established in others, but there is a newness to it, and I do think that contributes to this. For the person who is, in class 3
Yes.
of the special, the oncology specialist or beyond, right? And, we're now getting on like 4th, 5th, even 6th classes at this point.
So cool.
Oh my God. Can you believe it? Like,
No.
I still think back, it's been 2 years, right, since we met at San Antonio, and just like all the things that have happened
Right.
since then. Like, oh my God.
Right? A lot can change.
So, on that note, for the listener who is thinking about starting this process or is starting this process, how long do you think listeners should budget to complete this process?
Yeah, God, that's a loaded question, Elise. That feels like a loaded question to me.
Specialty. It's
Um,
my specialty.
right? And I'm like, oh, let me take a deep breath. I am a planner. I think realistically, enjoy your year, enjoy your first year, see what's out there, dabble in different things, reach out to new people. I think realistically, budgeting yourself the second 2 years to really finalize what calls to you, what you enjoy, is the smartest way to go. I think what's also a little bit different now is people are coming into this specialization not necessarily as a new clinician. A lot of people have a ton of experience at this point, and they're like, now there's this thing offered, it's established. And you guys might not have to work as hard because you're already out there and doing things. So I think also take into consideration where you are in your career. Don't let it scare you. Don't let it hold you back. But somebody who has been teaching or who has been frequently publishing articles, who has been involved at higher levels within the APTA, you just naturally may be able to accomplish those things a little bit quicker. Whereas somebody who is just starting out, who has this love for this beautiful population that we work with, it might take you a little bit longer to find out what calls to you. And I think that's the other important part about this maintenance process is, yes, when you break it down to technicalities, there are things you're checking off, right? But make them things
Right.
that you love.
Right.
And so
Right.
take time to find what you love so that it doesn't feel as overwhelming. But give yourself the time that you need, whether that time is right away so you can plan, or whether that time is I need to explore. But I mean, I would be crazy to tell you that you could accomplish this starting 3 months before your maintenance
Yeah.
is due. I mean, there's just no
Yeah.
way. Give yourself the time, but understand what that time looks like to you,
Yeah. Makes sense.
right? It would be cool if there was like a magic equation that was like, if you've done this many things and you have this much time and you could do, and it spits out a number, right? But I felt like for me, it did take a little bit longer. It did. I felt like I really had to search and put myself out there. Whereas for my next cycle, I feel like it's already part of my vibe at this point.
That's good. That's really good to
Yeah.
hear.
So, and write things down. Write
Yeah.
things down. My goodness. Keep a list. because keep your CV updated or a list on your computer, because that was challenging for me, as I knew there were things
Okay.
I accomplished in that time frame from
Mm-hmm.
2020 to 2023,
Yeah.
but life had been so crazy that I hadn't been the best historian, which is
Yep.
typically not a problem for me.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, I don't even remember if I did this in 2020 or 2010 or yesterday, because I don't, where have these last 3 years gone? And
Mm-hmm.
so I think being able to realistically keep a list, write things down of what you've done, how you've done it, and how long those things have taken you will help you decide how much time you need to give to this process.
Okay. Those are some really actionable tips, and that's very helpful. Like thinking back on some of the things that I've done over the past almost 3 years
Mhm.
and how that relates to all of this, it reminds me a lot of like when I encounter undergrad students and they're asking, like, how do I get into PT school? It's like, well, first of all, write down a list, like, keep a log of all of the observation hours and, like community involvement, whatever. So, very much, wow, this reminds me a lot of college, which is okay, not a
Mhm.
bad thing. What tips for someone who is like, okay, I'm ready to dive in? What are some tips that they should implement to make this Mosky process easier? I know we've already talked about some, but if you were like quick passing someone in the elevator, what are just some of those things you would suggest?
Oh gosh, again, another very detailed question, girl.
I know.
Is there
I know.
anything quick about this?
No, no. I mean, listen, I think this mimics the Mosky quite well.
Right? I love it. Okay,
Nothing's
if I
fast.
was if I was like in an elevator and I had to give like my elevator pitch,
Here we go.
find what you're passionate about, seek out mentors, write things down, be proud of yourself. That's always a big one.
Oh.
And do things that make you happy.
I feel like I just got a life coaching session
Right.
in addition to some Mosky tips.
Right. I mean, think about it. Like, I think that's the other problem about waiting till the end is like you have to just pick something. But if you can like genuinely, like if writing an abstract or a study or whatever it is, if you hate writing, don't pick that. Don't do
There we
it.
go.
Don't do it. Find things that make you happy. And this process won't seem as daunting. It'll be fun. We're back to fun.
We're back to fun. Which Jen and I were talking off here before we started, and Jen is the perfect personality to like take a topic that is generally not considered anywhere close to the realm of fun, but making it fun and applicable for what you enjoy doing. I'm really glad that you're the specialization chair, Jen, because I feel like this could get real boring real quickly. And I do feel, again, y'all, in this conversation that we've had today, I already feel much more excited and not dreading this already. And that's totally what I needed. So they were very strategic in having you be the specialization chair, Jen.
Well, I appreciate that. I think part of my favorite thing about coming on this podcast is you and I always have an idea of what we want to talk about. And I think if you like asked us at the beginning of this where we thought this was going, it would it would be very different than where it
Very
actually
different.
went,
Very
right?
different.
But
Yes.
whenever I have the opportunity to like get out there and share my views and my thoughts and partner with someone who's as passionate as me, like the goal is never to make somebody feel overwhelmed. It's to inspire you. It's to make you know that one, you're not alone, and two,
Yep.
like gosh, the things you can get out of this maintenance process are like the coolest achievements.
Yep.
So
Yep.
don't be afraid and don't let it overwhelm you. I let it overwhelm me. And I wish I could take that back, because when I actually reflect on it, I'm like, whoa, that was cool.
Oh, that's so neat. That's so cool.
I know.
Oh my God.
I love us.
You're really cool, Jen. Like, I know I've said that before, but like, you're really cool.
I wish we didn't live so far away.
I know. Well, oh, on that note, are you going to CSM?
I am.
Oh, okay, good. I'm going to be there too this year.
I
Like,
am
it's
going to
official.
CSM in my favorite city ever, because it's where I spent my 6 years in school, in Boston. So Boston has this biggest piece of my heart, and I
Oh
can't
my God.
wait to bring a little bit of what I loved the city to all of you guys.
Oh my God, I'm here for it.
Yes, for
I
any restaurant
love.
tips, things to do, holler at your girl.
Jen Travel Agency.
Literally. Let me add that to my list of things.
Perfect. Oh my God. Okay, so before we go, we cannot finish the conversation without letting the listener know there is something really exciting coming up that you have curated and whatnot. That, like, again, I am extremely selfishly benefiting from this because it is when I need this information. So, first of all, thank you, Jen, for putting this on. Tell us about this webinar that you are bringing to life, all about this process.
Oh gosh, it's so exciting. I feel like it's been a long time in the making, but we are going to be doing a webinar all about specialization. And the idea is just to bring us together. Whether you are a specialist, whether you want to be a specialist and you're just thinking about it, or you've been approved to sit for the exam, this is really a webinar for everyone. And the idea behind it is just to really talk briefly about how we got here, what specialization looks like, provide some tips and tricks. But we have a panel of some incredible specialists who are really going to be able to take the time to share their stories. And some of them, we've kind of spread them out along this continuum of specialization, so they can really provide people with insight as to, again, how to make this specialization process work for you, how to make it
Right.
special, how to make it what you want it to be. And so I am so, so excited for this group of people to come together and share with the world their powers. So I hope you guys get to tune in. We are moving towards October. These people are very, very, very busy. They are the creme de la creme specialists, and we are working hard to get all of our schedules paired up and matched together so we can bring you something beautiful. And I know that Elise will do the best job helping me get that out there for you guys.
I'm really, really excited for it. As soon as we get that date finalized, I say we, like I have any role in
Oh,
this.
girl, you're
I'm
in
just showing up.
Guys,
But
I
as soon
just
as
need
that
to
date
do a
is
plug.
finalized,
Elise will be featured in the webinar. So
I
if you're a
will be
fan
in
of
the
Elise
webinar.
and the Onco PT podcast, please tune in.
Oh my God. Thanks, Jen. But yeah, as soon as we get that date finalized, I will, of course, put that in the show notes so you'll have that information as well as any
Yay.
relevant links on how to sign up for it. Because, again, like, I very selfishly, like I mentioned previously, I'm benefiting from this share of knowledge because it's what I wish I had when I was pursuing and considering specialization. But now, as I am real time working through this MOSCI process, because mine comes up in June,
Yes.
I'm benefiting from this information of those who have gone before me and done the thing so that I can actually do the thing myself. So, Jen, I so appreciate you coming on the podcast as usual. I mean, obviously, this definitely needs to be the Jen and Onco PT podcast because
I
how much
feel like
fun we
we need
always.
to do like a monthly little drop in.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it needs to happen. And again, I love that you touched on this already, but you and I always have a pretty good idea of what we want to cover in the podcast, but the how it happens is really, really cool. And I think that's where the magic of you happens, because it's like we have an idea and then you just come on and you drop these knowledge and wisdom bombs. And literally over the course of 20 minutes, you already changed how I was feeling about the Mosky. And that is a really big accomplishment. So
Ugh, then I can
good
sleep well
job.
tonight.
You've changed me. I'm a changed PT because of this conversation.
Well, and I hope it goes beyond you, of course. I mean,
Yes.
I think this process naturally, anytime as therapists something's put in front of us, we are all a certain type of people. And you can't argue with me there. Our brains are all wired in a very similar way. And I think we always want to achieve bigger and better, and we want to, produce something that is special. But if you just focus on what you're already doing and you just get out there, no matter what you bring to the table is going to be special because it's you.
Mic drop, as usual.
I'm blushing.
Jen, where can people find and follow and connect with you on the internet?
Oh my gosh, please reach out to me on Instagram. I feel like I did this last time. I'm pretty sure my username is Jen L. Bernstein, but we will definitely double check that.
We'll check.
But please reach out to me. I love hearing from you guys. My email address, you can email my personal email address, which is my last name, Bernstein, BERNSTEINJ18 at gmail.com. Please connect with me, ask questions. I love to hear from you guys. It makes my heart happy knowing that I can change your mind about something or just drop a little tidbit of information your way. I love it. I welcome it. Don't hesitate.
Thank you, Jen. And of course, I will include all the information that Jen shared in the show notes, which you can find at the oncopt.com. And yeah, Jen, this was magical. I really cannot express how much this conversation means to me and how necessary it is. And I know that, again, while this summer kind of sucked because of the patients that I saw and what they were telling me, it just goes to really emphasize how much this is really needed within our communities, because at the heart of it are patients who need our help, and we don't do that. We don't help them by keeping that knowledge to ourselves. So
Exactly.
thank you again. This was wonderful. And to the listeners, as always, this is Elise with the OncoPT. And remember, you are exactly the physical therapist that your patients with cancer need. So let's get to work.